avec lui.
Bonjour, Scott.
Bonjour, Scott. Nice to meet you.
Bonjour.
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 Je vais vous lire le règlement d'implémentation, version française ou anglaise.
Anglais, ça.
Each team has 20 minutes to present its case to the judge. I will order a scene for the last 10, 5 and 2 minutes, as well as for the last 30 seconds of the presentation. In the last 10 seconds, I will indicate with my finger the number of the second remaining. If you have not finished your presentation after 20 minutes, you will be stopped in order to proceed with the Q&A. A Q period of a maximum of 5 minutes is allocated to the jury at the end of your presentation. Please note that at any time you cannot say or reference the name of the location of your university. I will now let the judge introduce themselves. You can start your presentation when they are finished.
Francis Desrochers, IGA Centre-Ville Bois-Paquette.
Janelle Bois-Paquette, owner of 2 IGAs.
Hi, my name is Marie-Pierre Saint-Hilaire. I'm the CEO of AFI.
Lise Bourdage, directrice projets spéciaux, innovation et développement économique Trois-Rivières.
Charles Lefebvre Saint-Arnaud, relève de la ferme Campanipole.
Pineapple Farm. Today we're dealing with an issue that deals with people, process, and technology. And we're here to make sure that there's a smooth transition. To take your family business from one generation and ensure the strategy that's set out can move forward along to the next one. My name is Scott. To my left I have Julian and Michael, and we're Building Blocks Consulting, and we're here to ensure a smooth transition from one generation to the family to the next with a proper strategy. So let's start off and take a look at the situation that we have at hand. We have a family-owned, organically certified family firm, something to be very proud of. It's community supportive, so a lot of the initiatives are outsourced to third parties, for example, your marketing, and you're really focused on innovation. So this is a farm that has their IT and IS system above all the rest, something that's giving you a competitive edge over everyone else. But where do you want to be? You want revenue growth. We understand there's other children that may be coming into the business. The business hasn't fully paid off its debts from when it started, so we want to make sure that we're maximizing the amount of revenue that's coming in order to ensure profitability over the long term. We want to increase efficiency. So what we really want to do is we want to reduce double entry. So we want to create an efficient IS system that will work together with your company. And we want smooth succession. So we want to be able to take the company from one generation to the next without any problems in terms of training or moving, who's going to be using the system, how are they going to be using it, who's going to be in charge of what. We want to be aware of all this when moving forward. And how are we going to get there? The question that you've put forward on us is, should you sell your software or not, or how should we grow if we don't sell the software? And we want a better integrated IS system. So the mandate that we have ahead of us today is how can your farm ensure sustainable growth over the long term to ensure the smooth transition. And the goals that we've outlined for you are very simple. Revenue growth, increasing efficiency, and smooth succession. And that's what's going to drive the decisions that we're going to make today. So let's take a look at the distribution process that you're currently have. It's very simple, and it's actually a really very rigid model. Very simply, your farms are distributing to locations, and your customers are actually going to pick it up themselves. So it's an efficient and flexible model that can actually be reproduced in many locations. So you don't have necessarily one retail location where consumers have to go. You have multiple distribution points. And as your company grows, so can those distribution locations. So once again, you have a scalable model. But let's take a look at your customer. So you don't know that much about your customer. But on the other hand, you have a great retention rate. So we're assuming right now that you do have quite satisfied customers. But the question is, what would they like to see more of? The question is, how did they become satisfied customers? How did they get to know you? These are all questions that need to be addressed in order to grow your business. they appreciate the convenient distribution. They can choose the distribution location they would like to go to. So if they move, they can actually just change the location distribution potentially to one that's close to where they are. You have a strong customer-focused business model, so it's all about making sure that what they're receiving is a good product. And the only issue that we're seeing is that there is limited visibility. So your customers are finding you through a couple different ways, but there's a lot of opportunity to expand at this point in time. And we want interaction with potential new customers. We want people to be able to go and find you and talk to you and ask you about your product and see your product. So increasing your customer base through visibility and better knowing your customers will allow you to better address their needs. So one of the questions you asked us today is short-circuit marketing. Is it going to be good for our business, or should we see it as an indirect competitor? And when we actually analyzed the short-circuit marketing, we saw that very simply, it is kiosks, it's public marketing, it's virtual locations, but what is it really? It's a venue. It's a venue for you to show your product. And this can be seen on multiple fronts. If you're not using these venues to show your products, but your competitors are, it is competition. It's allowing your competition to go out and show their products where you're not there. The potential to lose your own market share. But if you're actually going and continuing to show how you differentiate yourself from your customers, the ease to use your system, how you have technology integrated, which makes it a smoother system, your distribution locations, how they're so convenient, then you have the ability to actually capture the market share of your competitors. So we see this as a potential advantage and something that you can allow to grow your business with. So with all this being said and understanding the business that's outlined today, we wanted to take a look at the family. So currently you have Mr. and Mrs. Lefebvre, and they have very distinct roles. And we want to make it very clear that the second generation is already in and is going to continue taking over. And what does that mean? We need very clear role identification. We need to know where they're going to be within the business. How are they going to be taking over slowly from their parents? So we feel that this is very important in order to ensure this smooth transition and in order to ensure the longevity of the business, because the worst thing that we can see is some kind of internal problem that someone didn't know something and it affects the customer, and we want the customer to continue to be happy. So we see a smooth transition in being essential for that. Finally, when we take a look at your actual IS and IT system, so what are we looking at? So data security. We realize that the system is actually only on one computer right now. We are making the assumption that it isn't currently backed up, so we see that as a bit of a problem, and we want to make sure that your data is always secure. What were to happen if the computer were to crash? We don't want to see any problems like that. So we want to make sure that there's a contingency plan for anything that's occurring. For the users, we know that there's really only two users that use it right now. The mother currently and one of the children that is currently trained on it. Our concern is that we want to make sure that the transfer of knowledge is not at risk. We want to make sure that someone can take over if ever anything were to happen. If ever there's, someone needs to take a leave of absence because they're having a baby, who's going to be taking over that system? We want to make sure that knowledge is transferred. Because when we deal with technology, we also deal with the people behind technology. They need to be trained about it, and they need to know how to use it in order for this business to be successful. And finally, inefficiencies. You've outlined very clearly that there are some inefficiencies, and we want to make sure we remove those, particularly when you're moving from your database to your accounting software. How are these two going to integrate together? And Julian's going to touch on that a little bit later. So we just want to double check that software is currently at the forefront of your business, and it's providing a competitive advantage. It's allowing you to differentiate from your consumers. And with that in mind, I'd like to pass it over to Mike, who's going to take a look at what we need to take a look at today and the decisions that we have to make.
Thanks, Scott. So as Scott has mentioned, there are three aspects that we're going to look into today: revenue growth, increasing efficiencies, and a smooth succession. To look at the first aspect of revenue growth, you asked us a question whether or not you should sell your software that you've created to better manage your own business. What that really is a question of how to grow. Selling the software, or you could increase the current customer base you're striving to go after. So we're going to take a look at these two alternatives and see what would be the better venue for you to increase revenue. To sell software, it's a whole new business model. You're going to have to develop the software to be adaptable to other businesses, whereas currently it's employed in solely your farm. You'd have to make it flexible so that other farms would be able to implement it and tweak it to their very processes. You're going to have to invest in software development and IP protection. You're going to have to communicate with a brand new customer base, brand new marketing strategies. You're going to have to hire new people to develop the software, so new HR, new customers, new processes, new risks, and essentially you're creating a brand new stream of revenue. It's a whole business divergence. On the other side, to increase your customer base, it would require developing new marketing tactics, such as short-circuit marketing, like Scott had mentioned. You can gather and analyze data to know more about your customers, so you can better market to them and know how to appeal to others in the similar mind. And the best way to do this would be to develop a website to become customer-facing. So we're going to take a look at these two alternatives based on 5 decision criteria, which is how it best fits with your company and your company culture, the farm, and your views and goals. The risks involved, the cost, the ease of the short-term implementation of how to roll it out quickly, and the time, how long it's going to take to put in place. So if we weigh these alternatives against each other, let's take a look at first selling software. In the short term, it's first off we've created the scale on a grading of 1 to 5. A score of 1 is bad, a score of 5 is good, and then we've stacked it to make a comparison. Looking first at the ease short-term implementation of selling software, it could be seen as simple. You have the software already, you can make a few tweaks and sell it. Time would be essentially the same as increasing your customer base. There's time involved in implementing a solution such as this. Selling the software, you have to set up the venues to sell it, develop the customers, work with the customers. Well, it's similar time structure in increasing a customer base. In the costs involved, score of 2 is low. It's going to be expensive to develop the software for sale. You're creating a whole new business and you need to build the infrastructure to go with it. Whereas costs of increasing your customer base are marketing costs, but it really goes towards what you're already doing. The risks involved are large in selling software. It's a brand new stream of revenue that you're going after. Unforeseen risks, new HR, new infrastructure investments, and IP protection, an area where it's not your core competence. And lastly, company culture and the fit, which this is what we consider to be the deal breaker. It has to mesh with your current organization for it to be a long-term success. And here selling software is really low. You use it to better yourself, but you're not, at the end of the day, a software seller. You're an organic farm, and so just appealing to more customers would be a much better fit for you to go after the customers and use the software you currently have to do that, rather than use it as a tool to do that, rather than selling it to your competitors. So when we've looked at revenue growth, now let's take a look at increasing efficiency. One of the questions, so to reiterate, we're going to bring it back. The first question that Scott answered, that you asked, was, is the short-circuit marketing complementary or is it a competitor? The way we look at this is short-circuit marketing is complementary to your business because it's awareness of the organic food farming market. And there's no better person to advertise of the industry other than your competitors. But not only can they be competitors, if you use it, it can be to your advantage. And you differentiate yourself by being customer-focused and serving your customers well and being a convenient service such that you set yourself apart. Second was to sell the software. We recommend that you use the software as an innovative tool to better yourself rather than forfeit this competitive advantage by selling it to your competitors. The fit of your company is focused on customers and efficiency. And if you do that and stick to it, you can use your software to make the business much stronger. And lastly, was how to reduce repetitive tasks, to remove inefficiencies in your business. The question you asked was the problem with the database and the accounting software. What we recommend here is to look at your constraints first of all. You're constrained by budget, you're still working down your early years losses. Time, you want something that's implemented quickly and it's not going to take forever. And lastly, that's risk averse. You don't want to be working on a solution that will then end up not working. So what we've outlined, and Julian will go into further detail, is creating a way to export the information from your database quickly and efficiently and import it into the accounting software. So bringing it back to the goals, which were revenue growth, reducing inefficiencies, and a successful succession plan, Julian is going to take you into how to implement the first 2 recommendations concerning revenue growth and reducing inefficiencies, as well as how to cover a successful succession. Thank you.
Michael. So, just a quick look at our implementation at a glance here. As we can see, our plan is outlined mostly over the next year, as well as succession plan being done as a follow-up afterwards. Let's go into a little bit more detail. the first thing we need to do is we need to look at what are the current software needs. Now, you've talked a lot about reducing the inefficiencies in terms of your database that's talking to your accounting software. Now, a lot of this data we see is redundant, and we need to make sure that we can get the data from the database exactly what we need to bring into the accounting software. So that's the first thing that we need to analyze. The second thing that we need to look at is customer needs. Now, your software currently gives you a great internal focus inside your company. You can look at the data and say, oh, I have this customer and they're located here and they're buying this type of basket, which is great for you. But it's not that super for your customer, because let's say that your customer wants to look at, for example, their basket or what kind of vegetables they want in their basket. They don't really have a means to do so other than contacting you either through phone or through email. They have no way to actually manage their own account. So this is one of the first things that we need to look at, is what it is exactly they need. Now, we've outlined account management as being one of them. That being said, there could be additional needs, so thorough analysis would be done to be done. Now, let's look a little bit in terms of, we talked about developing the website. Now, what would this website do in terms of your customer need? Now, here's a quick little demo. Basically, what you would be able to do here is, let's say a customer has an account with you. He would have an account on this website. He would be able to go and manage his account, say, okay, I have this type of basket, and I'd like, if possible, to have additional strawberries, additional zucchinis, I don't know. It could be up to the customer's choice, depending, of course, on their basket type. It would also be a great way for you to gather feedback from your customers. If you have, for example, polls on your website as to what type of vegetables are your customers looking to have, you can get direct feedback from your customers, and especially customers that are already using your website will want to give you this feedback, because these are things that directly impact them. Of course, one thing that is important to note as well is it would be having 2 language option. Now, we are in Quebec, so French and English. Why would it be important to also have English in addition to French? Because if you ever expand your market to locations such as Montreal, having that English option will allow you to capture that additional market that might not be so comfortable with French. So, of course, we've talked a lot about this data. One thing that we saw was a little in terms of your communication was how you communicate with your customers. Now, having that website will already be a great step. That being said, it would also be important to have some type of email distribution, which is why we recommend setting up a MailChimp account, which allows you to actually mail emails to all your customers, which you'll be getting their emails through their accounts on the website. And what that will allow you to do is basically tell them about what's going on in the farm, send out polls, and be able to gather feedback, as well at the same time be able to send them their invoices online. Currently, they're getting their invoices with their basket, but I'm sure some of them would rather get them via email because it's just a lot easier for them to track their finances. Additionally, by gathering this feedback, you'll be able to get better distribution planning. Now, if you see that a lot of customers are, for example, in certain specific areas, or are demanding feedback on maybe having an additional distribution center in a specific area, you can look towards tailoring towards those customers and improving your distribution. Of course, this is not going to necessarily come right away, so we have these changes that will need to be done because you are implementing effectively this request for additional data. So there will be some changes that need to be done within the database as well as within the software. Basically changes that are going to be happening because of this additional data need. Now, we recommend that, of course, you keep working with the software developer that you've been working with. Why? Because they already know the database, they already know the software, and they're in a very strong position in order to keep implementing these changes. At the same time, of course, we need to develop the website backbone. An additional feature we found that could be very interesting for your customers would be e-payments. Now, it wasn't clear to us how your customers actually handle transactions to pay for their goods. But for us, your service is partially about convenience. Your customer goes to a distribution location, picks up the basket, and they don't have to drive all the way to the farm. If they could pay online, it would be a lot faster and a lot easier for them. They would have that extra step that they wouldn't necessarily need to take. So this could be an option of implementing. Of course, we've allocated some time for testing and bringing that database online. So what this does is make sure everything is working fine, and bringing the database online makes it secure. So in case the computer ever crashes, you have that data. It's not gone. You can always recover it. And then, of course, the launch of the website, which is the big important thing. Now, we did outline a few risks in terms of what could happen here. We don't necessarily need to cover them, but they are there for you. Now, Scott will talk about the succession plan.
So, when we started the presentation, we said we need a smooth succession. And we explained to you how you should grow your business and how to reduce those redundancies. But now looking at moving forward, it's very, very, very important that your family understand what is the process in succession. So particularly, we outlined two main things that if it's not already dealt with, we want to make it very clear to you that it should be done very quickly. So first of all, management. We need to be aware of, you've got two people in an organization. When will succession be occurring? When will yourself begin to take over the organization, one step at a time, and what will your siblings be doing at the same time? It's important to understand who will be involved in management and who will not be involved in management, which roles will each person be taking on, and of course, making sure that if there are roles that aren't covered, or they're not taken care of, that we can outsource them or bring in HR. And finally, for shareholders, it's important to understand which children are receiving what. Whenever dealing with siblings, of course, sibling rivalry is an issue, and we want to make sure that it's just clear to everyone what they're receiving. So finally, we started off the presentation by saying these were our goals: revenue growth, increasing efficiency, and smooth succession. And today we feel that we've been able to achieve them and allowed your company to grow sustainably. So we'd like to thank you very much and open the floor to any questions you may have.
Do you want to start?
I have no question yet.
Rather than choosing between selling the software or not, could we increase the customer base and sell the software? You're saying you're going to make changes anyways. You're going to do some database changes, software changes anyways. Could we take those changes and sell it after?
It's a great question. At the end of the day, we see your software as mainly something that provides you a competitive advantage over your other competitors. If you move towards outsourcing your software, distributing your software, you have the potential to lose that competitive advantage to a certain extent and focus your efforts in a place that is not necessarily where your expertise lies. Also, the legal fees, the protection that you may incur, there are some issues that would need to be double checked, as well as if your software developer is the one developing most of the software. Our concern is that if that individual decides to leave, what would occur at that point in time? Could he go and develop a system extremely similar and distribute it himself? Your competitive advantage is farms and organic farms, and you're great at it. And the system provides you a competitive advantage. Stick with that, develop your base, and we believe you can be extremely profitable in that sense because that market is growing.
Right. You've skipped the risks part. Could you...
Return quickly.
Okay, could you take a few moments to tell us about that?
Yeah. These are, of course, risks mostly based on the development of the patches, the website, the software. So, of course, one of the big ones in terms of just inefficiency was what happens if, for example, your accounting software can't import. In this case, we would try to minimize redundancies in terms of how your database is actually handling data that is talking to your accounting software. Because right now, a lot of it is done by hand. It's from our understanding, a printout that you then have to enter again. If we could just at least minimize that, that would be the way to go. Of course, a big one is what happens if some of these changes make the software crash. We did give ample development time as well as close to 5 months of testing in order to make sure that no such crash actually would happen. That being said, it's always possible to temporarily go offline and fix it. And as well as what happens if you run over budget, because of course these projects do have a budget. Well, right now we've already set some deliverables, some goals, as well as a timeline. but it would always be possible to partially scale back the project. For example, remove features such as e-payments and set them back to a later date until we can find additional budget.
So what would be your backup plan if that doesn't work, or if there's a crash or something? Because right now it works and it doesn't require a lot of things. So what would be the backup plan if anything goes wrong?
If anything goes wrong, we can always go back to the current software that we're using in case it, like, for example, let's say we patch the software, it crashes. We can always go back to the previous patch until the current patch is fixed. It's always an option.
Even though you're working online?
Well, the online would only be the database, and databases are hosted, and therefore it's extremely hard to crash a database because online hosts do have a lot of protection in order to try to prevent that. And you're already using a Microsoft product, so it's already quite secure, and so we don't necessarily foresee a database crash being a problem.
All right.
I have a question about the database. We know that Access is like a user database instead of SQL, or commonly used for a website like what you're offering. So what were you thinking if you don't change Access and you don't move with .NET or like another technology like that? What was your plan to do the website, to develop everything without like having many risk?
One of the great things of Access is Microsoft 360 Solutions does offer online database, which is basically an online port of Access, which makes the transfer extremely easy. That being said, it's always possible to look into different technologies if necessary. We, of course, don't recommend this because you're used to this current database, and it would just be a lot simpler, a lot less costly to stick with what you know, of course.
Okay, thank you.
That's it.
Merci. Thank you very much. Thank you. Congratulations. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes.